it is genuinely an everyday struggle. A scared person that's not really built for the world, because I have no control. Really, really, really hitting the gutter. I have learnt loads of stuff over the years that have helped me massively. And if it helps people, happy days. Hello YouTube, I'm Marcus Hayes, and some of you may recognise me from my other YouTube channel, which basically documents my life with my classic Fords. So if you've come over from that channel, welcome to this channel. You may have seen me mention a couple of times on that channel that I struggle with mental health. And although I don't like to bang on about it all the time, because for me, I don't think it's beneficial for me to build an identity out of it, it is genuinely an everyday struggle, as I'm sure it is for most people that suffer in one way or another. Now, it just so happens that for years and years and years, I have studied, the subject of mental health, the subject of self-help and improving yourself online. And yeah, I've spent thousands of hours in my life learning how to make my life better, make myself happier. Before I sort of looked into self-improvement, I was, and still am, a socially awkward, introverted, weird, scared person that's not really built for the world. I've never been comfortable in social situations. People that know me or people that have seen me on YouTube would probably find that hard to believe, but deep down I am a mess. But, I've learnt things over the years to improve things, a million times. But there is one issue in particular that has been a big part of my life, my whole adult life. And, I've been through phases where it hasn't been an issue and, phases where it is an issue. And that is basically that I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. And I know some of you guys that have probably met me or seen me on the other channel, that might be a bit of a shock. And I was planning to literally, in this video, just talk my whole life story with my drugs. But yeah, I think that'll be a bit boring. And I think it's more relevant to sort of talk about where I'm at now. Now, in all honesty, at the moment, or for the last few years, I've been in a bit of a cycle where once a month, usually when my girlfriend does her night shift, I will secretly, on my own, go and sniff cocaine and get drunk. And I need to get drunk at least when the cocaine runs out, just because the come downs are so harsh. And, every single time I tell myself it's the last time and I'm not going to do it again. And then I get myself back on my feet, using what I've learned about self-help and positivity. And, I concentrate on my YouTube and whatnot and concentrate on being a good boyfriend and, build myself up, gain some momentum, and then, promise myself that it's never going to happen again. And then usually every month when my girlfriend does her night shift that she does once a month, I get back on it again. And I hate myself. And it's just a vicious cycle. A lot of the time, my girlfriend doesn't even know that I've been on it. Drug addicts are very good at lying, very good at hiding, I'd always sort of say that I'm ill, Sometimes I'll just get up early as she comes in and, say that I've got stuff to do and, just so I'm not in the bed, sweating and, heart racing, because she'll know what's going on. There's sometimes I'll get home from a mad mission, 10 minutes before she turns up, like after doing a night shift. Like there has been times where I haven't made it home in time, and she's just been, she's come home from a night shift, assuming that, I'm on my positivity and all this and, and I'm not there. And they're the times where she does sort of know what's gone on because I'm forced to admit it. So let me talk more about how bad these sessions get, because I have no control. Once I start sniffing, I don't have any control about how much I'm going to be sniffing that night, how bad things are going to get. A lot of the time I'll sort of plan to just get, a gram or half a gram of sniff and sit at home and, be a good boy. But once I get high, like I've got no control, and a lot of the time I end up going on mad missions, Sometimes I'll jump in a cab and just tell them to drop me off in a random town. And then I'm just walking around at night on my own, sniffing gear, and, you know, drinking bottles of vodka. Sometimes I just end up, you know, getting in another cab and going to another town and walking around there. But inevitably, eventually, you get to the point where my phone's run out of battery, so I can't call any more cabs. You know, the gears run out. Maybe my money's run out. I've been in situations where my money runs out and I just have to walk home. And I don't know what town I'm in, you know, at this state. I'm out of my head. I don't know where I am. I'm just walking and walking and walking and looking for some sort of sign that, you know, tells me I'm heading, you know, in the rough direction of where I live. I remember a couple of times where, you know, I've walked and walked and walked and walked and walked, and somehow I've ended up like taking a couple of turnings and end up where I was like hours before. It's a nightmare, you know. Obviously, when I'm on the session, walking around and getting high, like, you know, at the time, I think it's great, you know. I think I'm I'm free, you know. I'm not doing anyone any harm, you know. I'm on my own. I'm, you know, out there, like, and I'll talk to whoever I bump into, you know. Like, I feel invincible. Like, it's really bad. It is really bad. As I've already mentioned, because, you know, I've studied self-help, I've studied mental health, I've studied drug addiction. Like, you know, I'm always able to get myself back on my feet and get, you know, back on my thing, and I'm positive and I'm sure, like, this is the last time that, you know, I'm going to take drugs. Like, and most months I just end up doing it again. Once I'm sort of back on my feet again, I get complacent, and that's when, you know, when I get that little thought in my mind, yeah, go and get some gear, you know, your girlfriend's at work, no one's going to know. I just follow that thought instead of accepting that it's just a thought and not allowing it to take hold of me, you know, which is related to one of the main things that I've sort of taught myself over the years, you know, being present to the moment, you know, meditation, you know, all these things that most people that I know probably think are weird, but, you know, they work. They really do, you know. Having a strict routine, you know. More recently, I've been going to the gym, trying to keep myself fit. But, you know, for years, I'd go through phases of running every day and stuff, you know, when I was picking myself up and, you know, on the times where I have been able to, you know, have a good few months or a couple of months without using cocaine. Now, it's fair to say that pretty much my whole life, I've gone through phases, you know, extreme phases. I've gone through phases where I was just smoking weed all day, every day, you know, literally on the way to work, on my breaks at work, after work. You know, it was the first and last thing I would do every day. You know, then I've been through phases where I haven't smoked weed. You know, I haven't smoked weed now for years, but there's been phases where I did, then didn't, then did. Same with drinking. There's been phases where I'd go out every weekend and drink, but not sniff cocaine. There's been phases where I'd go out every weekend, and every time I did go out drinking, I would do cocaine. And as I say, on the phases where I'm not doing drugs, you know, I'm really positive. Like, when I had my day job, I would like focus on doing loads of overtime and earning money and, you know, buying parts for my cars, and then, yeah, I'd just fall back into another phase where, you know, not doing anything with the cars, like just being a waste man, literally. I mean, talking about my day job, if you've watched my other channel, you'll know what that day job was. I used to work for Royal Mail as a collection driver, and you wouldn't believe the amount of drugs that get sent through the post. I would regularly open a post box and just get a whiff of weed. So, you know, there was times where I was stealing these parcels from the post boxes. Sometimes, you know, if it was a phase where I was smoking weed, then I would be smoking the weed. You know, if it was a phase where I wasn't, I'd be selling the weed to pay for whatever else I was doing. Now, there was actually a time where, well, there's a couple of times actually, you might find this hard to believe, like, but, you know, there's been a couple of times where I've found huge amounts of cocaine in the post boxes. Open it up, smells of weed. You know, obviously these drug dealers are sending various different types of drugs, you know, at the same time. Open it up, you know, you get a whiff of weed, decide to nick a couple of packages, and yeah, I couldn't believe it. The first time that I found cocaine in a parcel, you know, I opened it up, massive bag, like a ridiculous amount, like more cocaine than, I don't want to say more cocaine than I've ever seen, because I have seen at one stage, I was knocking about with some people, you know, and I did see a massive amount, but, you know, more cocaine than your average cocaine user has ever seen. And yeah, I just started doing it every day at work in the morning. You know, I'd have a bit of breakfast, because you can't eat when you're on sniff. So bit of breakfast, then straight away on the gear all day, literally before work, during work. I was driving around in my Royal Mail van, scooping cocaine up my nose, driving around all day, high out my face, going into schools and doctors and wherever else to collect the mail, because firms, sort of have collections, high out my face, hiding it from my girlfriend. Like, I'd sort of make sure that, once I come home, I weren't doing any. And then when she went to bed, I'd be on it again. And yeah, there was a couple of times where I went through a period of a month sniffing every single day. I'd sort of have the odd day off once a week just to, just to kid myself that things weren't as bad as they were, But yeah, it got to the point where it was a struggle. And then obviously eventually this free cocaine that I found ran out. And you're just forced to stop doing it every day, But there was one of the times where, I found a load of cocaine, ended up using every day for about a month, where when it ran out, I was desperately trying to find, jiffy bags, like in the post boxes, like to carry it on. There was a time where I did actually, again, find a post box that had drugs in it and opening them up. And, you was finding weed, and I was finding MDMA, ketamine. The MDMA and the ketamine I'd used a little bit and then ended up throwing it away. Yeah, like desperately struggling to find cocaine, like, opening stupid amounts of jiffy bags, you know what I mean? Like, I'm no thief, like I hate the idea of thieving, but in my head it was just like, they're criminals anyway, it's like it's a harmless crime, But yeah, this one time I wasn't able to find any more cocaine, and then I just started buying it every day. And obviously cocaine's expensive when you're doing it every day. I've heard stories where people are doing like grams and grams and grams and grams a day. I was sort of doing 1 or 1.5 grams a day, like, because as I say, I was at work, so you're just sort of doing a line every now and again at work or a bump on a card. So, probably not as bad as some people out there that have literally lost everything and, they're doing, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds a day. But it was bad. Like, it got to the point where I just could not stop. And then something told me to basically admit it to my girlfriend, and I had to do it there and then. I remember I was at work, my sniff had run out, and I was contemplating, going to my dealer, like, on the way home from work, gonna tell my girlfriend I had to do something, like I was gonna be home late. And I just had this urge to text my girlfriend, just say, look, like, I just told her, I just said, look, I've been doing coke every day and I really can't stop. I really think I need to get help. So that evening, we got in contact with someone and then got in contact with CA, which is Cocaine Anonymous. And I actually went to a few meetings. I was going to a meeting a day. I think I went to like 4 meetings in total. And then it was good. Like, I felt like I belonged in these meetings because, it was a group of addicts. Like, they all understood. Like, a lot of them, were probably worse than me. Some were not as bad as me, but it weren't about that. It was all about, we're all who we are, like, respect, not in judgment. But after a while, it seemed like a bit of a cult. Now, as I've already mentioned, for years and years and years, I've studied addiction, studied mental health and stuff. So, the CA is the same as AA. They work the 12 steps. Look it up if you've got an addiction or if you haven't. It's interesting. And, there are some of them steps that, just don't resonate with me. And maybe that's just me in denial. Maybe, maybe, as I say, I'm in denial. Maybe I have to just put that aside to ever get well. But yeah, it felt a bit culty to me and I just stopped going. But still stayed off the sniff for a while. I can't remember exactly how long, but eventually got back into the same cycle again, using every month when my girlfriend was on night shift. So yeah, I'm just giving you a picture of like how bad things have got in the sort of relatively recent, past. I genuinely think if I wasn't with my girlfriend, then I would just end up doing it every day. I would just end up becoming one of those guys like that ends up on the streets, probably just become a crackhead and like go really downhill. Like the only things that have sort of kept me on the straight and narrow-ish is the fact that I've got a girlfriend, the fact that, I've got the other YouTube channel and, I get a lot of positivity from that. And in fact, it was when I'd mentioned, literally briefly on the other channel that, when there's times where I haven't uploaded a video for ages, because the truth is I'm on a week-long come down, you know what I mean? And I just put a post out saying, apologies for the lack of content, I'm struggling a bit with my mind. I never went into detail. I never really opened up. But then I would get flooded with messages saying, it's like, thank you for opening up, and people telling me that they've got mental health issues. In fact, in general, ever since I've been making videos, people have always said that my videos help them with their mental health. It's an escape from what's going on in their minds, to watch me messing about with my cars and stuff. I get messages saying that I inspire people, with their cars and stuff, and it's amazing. It's amazing. That sort of stuff has really kept me going, and probably, as well as having a supportive girlfriend, that is probably the thing that sort of stopped me really, really, really hitting the gutter, and getting worse. My most recent relapse, which wasn't very long ago at all, I don't claim to be through this, it is an everyday thing, it's very raw still, but yeah, my most recent relapse, again, just mentioned, because I was actually ill as well. I had a bug, and then, had a mental wobble as well, and then again, people getting in touch saying, and then I just had this sort of calling, I felt like I had a duty to actually open up. And that is why I decided to start this channel, because I have learned loads of stuff over the years and stuff. Although I'm not immune to failing, I have learned loads of stuff over the years that have helped me massively, and I believe could help other people. Just because I've been the kind of guy that sits there studying stuff on YouTube. But also, selfishly in a way, I believe that if I'm making videos sharing that knowledge and helping other people, it's going to keep the idea of staying on the path and bettering myself in my mind constantly, so I don't get to the stage where I get complacent, and then hopefully when I get those urges to go and take drugs, it's a reason for me not to. I'm holding myself, making myself accountable. So that's why I decided to make these videos, because there is a lot of people, loads of people out there suffering, especially men. They don't talk about it and stuff. I don't have an issue with talking about it. I just don't find it good for me to build an identity out of it. I'm not scared to talk, but I also don't want to, I don't want to be the kind of guy that's just constantly, oh, I'm a drug addict, I'm a drug addict, I'm a drug addict. I'm unconfident. I'm a waste man. I'm this, because I think, it's a balance. You've got to be willing to talk about it. You don't want to be bottling everything up, but you also need to be focusing more on how to improve your life rather than reminding yourself of how bad it is. It's a bit of both. Now, through, me studying the subject of addiction, I've learned that addictions are formed from, your childhood. A lot of people have really bad upbringings. I didn't have a bad upbringing. Some people have been abused, they've been neglected. I was lucky. I had, a positive upbringing. But because of what I've learned about addiction, I've sort of forced myself to go back and remember things that weren't so great. What might be sort of subliminally, subconsciously affecting me. So, for example, I was bullied in primary school. I've always been not into fighting. I'm not a fighter. I've always been scared of fighting, despite the fact that I've, did taekwondo when I was a kid and became a black belt when I was 11 years old, and I was teaching adults how to fight, how to do taekwondo and stuff. Yeah, I've never been a fighter. I've always been a bit of a coward, and I was bullied. And when you think about it, sniff makes you confident. Yeah, it makes you feel invincible. Even though I'm a bit of a coward, really, and I don't like fighting, when I'm on sniff, I'll fight the world. So, again, I'm not the kind of person that lives every day remembering about when they were bullied and everything, and it affected me, at least not in the forefront of my mind. But because I've learned that addictions stem from childhood trauma, I've gone back and I've made that link. I've never liked fighting. I've always been a bit unconfident, always been a bit of a coward, and cocaine takes all that away. Another thing, again, it's not a major issue. Out of all my friends when I was a kid, I was the one that was called in earliest by my parents, and it's not a big deal, but at the time it probably was as a kid. So when I look back, there's a pattern there. That might be why when I get on sniff, I go on mad missions, and I want to be free, because when I was a kid, I subconsciously in the back of my mind, there'll be memories of when I was a kid and I got called in before everyone else, having to, go to bed and still hear my friends outside playing football and stuff. Another thing, I remember when I was sort of early teens, I got really spotty. So I went from being, a normal kid that has girlfriends to, not having girlfriends for a good few years because I was unconfident, because I was spotty. Well, when I'm on sniff, I will talk to anyone any woman. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what I look like. Like, it makes you feel invincible. It gives you confidence. So maybe that's why, cocaine sort of resonates with me and works so well, you could say. So yeah, that just gives you an idea of how, like, when I've studied things and, I try and sort of find solutions and reasons and try and understand what's going on in my head rather than let it, dominate my life. But as I say, I'm not immune to failure. I remember actually going back to the fact that I like to go on these mad missions when I've been sniffing. I remember, 2 other sort of phases in my life, which are, probably 10 years ago and 15 years ago, where I do exactly the same thing. There was one time when I was I was in the Ealing area, so it was literally one bus to go pretty much into central London. And the girl I was with then, we'd go out together, like drinking the weather, or I'd go out with my friends or whatever, and I was using a lot of sniff when I was going out, and then we'd come home and then she would go to bed, and then I would jump on the bus and go to London and go on these mad missions. Exactly the same, jumping on buses, jumping in cabs and whatever, and then eventually sniff would run out, the money would run out, my battery would run out, and I'd find myself making my way home somehow, on buses and trains when people are, going about their morning activities, like, feeling all cold and like a scumbag, you know what I mean? Everyone else is living like a normal life and there's me all like just trying to get home. So yeah, that would have been roughly about 10 years ago. And then about 15 years ago, same thing on the estate where I used to live when I was living with my parents. Same thing. We'd go to the pub or whatever, we'd do whatever. And then, eventually all my friends would go home. Sometimes we'd go to an after party, but then that would end and everyone got kicked out. And, when everyone else went home, I would just start walking around the streets. And it was actually at that point where I sort of first noticed that cocaine was really messing with my mind. And this was before I actually started really studying the mind and stuff like that. Yeah, I believe that I was actually suffering with psychosis at that point. Weird stories going through my mind that I needed to kill myself, but because I didn't have the guts to kill myself, I needed to find someone who looked like a bad person and kill them, and then I would get sent to prison, and then I might have the bottle to kill myself. Luckily, I was nowhere near actually acting this out, but this was the voice that was, in my head. And then years later, I sort of started studying things about, living in the present moment. That's when I was first sort of introduced to meditation, which is something that I haven't religiously done over the years, but I've, started doing it again since this last relapse because it really helps, and as well as another couple of things. And I will make a dedicated video on my sort of routine that I'm sticking to now that keeps me on track, because I think that'll be a really cool insight into how I sort of keep myself on the right path, and maybe some of you guys could implement some of the things that I'm doing, and it might help you. But yeah, that was when I first started realizing that the thoughts in your mind, the voice in your mind, or what your mind is doing isn't actually you. Like if when you get to the point where your mind is saying ridiculous things like I just described, like you realize no, that isn't me. That's just a thought. Like that's just a voice. Whereas most of the world are literally driven by their mind. They think that if they've got angry thoughts, oh, I'm angry, I'm this, I'm that. When you can actually separate yourself from your mind, and that's been a big thing for me in terms of keeping myself sane. And you could say that it's the one thing that I fail to do when I do make this rash decision to go and get high. Your mind's telling you to do something that you shouldn't, and that's where I let my guard down. So that's why I've sort of got back on the meditation now, because the meditation, it's basically practicing not being taken by your mind and dragged where you don't want to go. So then hopefully when triggers come up, like my girlfriend does nights, or whatever, or I get this stupid idea to go and get high, I've practiced enough to sort of accept that it's just a thought and not follow it. And also, as a drug addict, I like to escape from the world. And, sitting down for 5-10 minutes every morning meditating is a way of escaping from the world. But yeah, maybe I'll, go into more detail about meditation as well in another video. I'm not an expert at it, but it genuinely does really help me. Ironically, it's your mind that tells you, oh, meditation's stupid, I ain't got time, oh, it doesn't work. And, that's what meditation is doing by not letting you get dragged along with what your mind's saying. So yeah, it's kind of ironic. But yeah, when I'm able to sort of tell myself, no, it works, it's helpful, do it, it really does help me out. But yeah, I wanted this video to be more, basically it's just to explain for the first time what my main issue is, the fact that I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. But yeah, there's obviously loads of other things around it. I will briefly say that, no, I don't go to the doctors. And, you know, some people might say that's the wrong thing to do, but you hear so many stories where people will go to the doctors with depression and they just get, you know, given pills. And, you know, again, because I'm the kind of person that studies things, you know, like looks into things, I've sort of learned that, and I don't want to go against any of you guys, what your doctors have told you, so it's just my opinion, but I've sort of learned that antidepressants and stuff, by their nature, they're not the kind of thing that you want to be on long term, because then they cause problems. And obviously as a drug addict, I don't want to just be addicted to something else. So yeah, I'm not the kind of person that goes to doctors and gets labels, you know, like diagnoses or, you know, chemical help, you know. But again, because I like to study this thing, you know, I'll see videos that come up about ADHD, and a lot of it, if not all of it, resonates with me. I don't see it as, oh, I've got ADHD. I see it as, that's a video about ADHD. It's definitely relevant to me, so I'm going to study it more. I'm going to look at what solutions there are, if any, you know what I mean? Or just listen to people who have got ADHD. And there's a lot of examples of that, you know, like I'm a bit of a sociopath, you know, I'm a bit bipolar, you know, ADHD resonates with me. Schizophrenia, you know, like when I've had voices in my head and stuff, like, you know, a lot of these things sort of resonate with me. So they just so happen to be things that I've studied in depth. And, you know, I don't claim to be a guru. I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert. All I know is that I've got a lot of knowledge. I've got a real willingness. And now I feel a calling and a duty to talk about not just mental health, but just improving your life in general. A lot of people they're just stuck in a rut. They're not being who they could be, you know. And I'm one of them. And yeah, I just feel like I've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of willingness to put this stuff out in the world. And if it helps people, happy days. If it helps me stay on my path, also happy days. And yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. You know, if there's anything specifically you want me to dive into a bit deeper on another video, or, you know, what issues do you have? You know, let me know in the comments. Let's have a bit of a discussion. And yeah, I'll be back with another video very soon where I'll be actually diving into the things I've learned that work for me, that hopefully will work for you. Have a great day.